Thanks for joining us. History in the making tonight. The Toronto Raptors are set to retire Vince Carter's jersey, a first in franchise history. Greg Ross is there for the big moment at Scotiabank Arena. Greg, we just saw a very emotional Carter speaking at a press conference.
That's right, Shannon. Yeah, that press conference lasting about 45 minutes, and Vince Carter fighting off tears for almost all of it, talking about just some of the things that are so important to him. Of course, this moment tonight, his number 15 going to the rafters here at Scotiabank Arena. No Raptor player will ever wear that number again, and it'll be proudly displayed up there. Obviously, that making him emotional, talking about his legacy, talking about his love for this city, talking about the memories of playing here in Toronto, and now being able to share it with his young son, who he actually had a special moment with in this press conference. Take a look.
It's been fun, especially this little dude. It's like my dad, who's proud.
Obviously, this will have a big impact on that young man's life, but you think about all the young men young men and women, really, who were touched by Vince Carter and his time here, impacted by what he was able to do in the city. Remember, when the Raptors got a team back in 1995, the NBA really wasn't a big thing here in Toronto, and then a few years later, they draft this sensation early on, and he just came in and really took this city by storm in his rookie year, and then not long after that, he goes to the All-Star game in 2000, and that's when he competed in that slam dunk contest, and that was just the biggest moment, I think, ever, especially at the time for this team before winning a championship, of course. But Vince Carter going in, winning the slam dunk contest, just some amazing acrobatic moves in that dunk competition. And I remember the likes of Shaquille O'Neal watching from the sidelines and just being amazed by this young Toronto sensation. That kind of put the spotlight on Toronto, the NBA spotlight now on Toronto, and this young guy that a lot of people thought was going to be the next Michael Jordan. And obviously Vince Carter had some great years. We saw a lot more of those big dunks in game action here in Toronto. Lots of reason to cheer. He was part of the team that made it to the playoffs for the first time ever for the Raptors. They would go to the playoffs twice with Vince Carter. They won their first playoff series with Vince Carter. He was a big part of this team, and we talk about the people that were influenced. You look across the NBA and you think about the Canadians who have made it to the NBA in recent years, and talk about the influence that Vince Carter had on them. You can look at this Raptors team that is going to be on the court tonight, and you see Kelly Olynyk, who is a player that actually, as a young kid growing up in the GTA, went to a Vince Carter camp, and then now playing on the Raptors and able to sit here and watch tonight as Vince Carter has his number and his jersey hoisted to the rafters here at Scotiabank Arena. So a really special moment for players like Kelly Olynyk and many more Canadian players who really grew up and idolized Vince Carter and are playing basketball because of him.
Yeah, you know, so many people inspired by Vince Carter, and it really was a long and a genuine press conference that we saw from Carter today. He also talked about the moment the perception of him changed. What can you tell us about that?
Well, you might remember, Shannon, back in the early 2000s, before Vince left here, things were a little rocky. He didn't leave on the greatest of terms when he left this city. There were a lot of people that were upset because he started talking about not wanting to dunk the ball anymore. No more slam dunks at the end of his tenure here with the Raptors. He would go on, play with other teams. He would dunk the ball after that, but he didn't do it at the end here in Toronto, and it seemed like he wanted out of this city. Now, he says that wasn't necessarily the case, but there were a lot of fans who were unhappy when he left. And when he would come back for years after leaving Toronto, he would come back here and he didn't get a warm and fuzzy reception. He was booed. He was booed loudly here in Scotiabank Arena for several years after leaving. But there was one moment where that all changed, and that was in 2014. And the Raptors played a tribute video for Vince Carter when he came back here as a visiting player. And he got a standing ovation, and he stood up and he was in tears. And we can take a look at that moment right now.
Taking a step forward and being in my bubble. Sorry. And just enjoying the moment, because that was one of the first times. So throughout those years leading up to it, you see highlights and videos, and I've enjoyed those moments, but it's something about seeing those highlights in this building, because that's where it was created.
And getting emotional again in this press conference today, thinking about that moment in 2014 and seeing his highlights and the memories coming flooding back. And again, we expect those memories will come flooding back again tonight. We'll see a tribute to him on the Jumbotron. We'll see his jersey and his number going up to the rafters here. And he just talked about just the emotion about knowing that that number, that jersey is going to be in these rafters. He said, forever, Shannon.
Such a legacy, and you've got a front row seat tonight. Thanks so much, Greg. We really appreciate it. Well, street parking in Toronto could soon cost you more. The city is considering a plan to raise rates for the second straight year. As Tyreek Reed shows us, the Parking Authority says it's all part of an effort to help boost local business.
Drivers who park their cars on this street are paying $4 an hour to keep their cars here, but that could change to $4.25 beginning next year.
It's a modest increase. We're pulling up all the rate cards except the lowest by a quarter.
On-street parking rates currently range between $1.50 to $6.50 an hour, but a new Toronto Parking Authority report is recommending to increase the rates by 25 cents at 20,000 spots in the city. The report will be presented to the agency's audit committee on Tuesday. TPA says the move is mainly to support local businesses.
When we start to see cars that are parking for extended periods of time and the parking spaces, consistently full, that's sort of indicative that it's time to, use the rates to drive the behavior that we're looking for.
Last year, City Council lifted the $5 cap for on-street parking to help tackle a growing deficit. That led to the current maximum hourly rate of $6.50. Another increase could generate more than $5 million for the agency, but drivers say they worry about what this could mean for them.
25 cents is not a lot of money, of course. It's just, it sets the stage for more and more and more every year.
Others say they understand.
The use of that space is limited, and one way to make sure that everyone gets a shot at using it is to charge enough for it.
Although drivers have mixed emotions, TPA says cyclists are a major part of the conversation. They say the money will be used to expand Toronto's bike share program, a move being celebrated by the community.
Making it a more convenient option for more people across the city is a really important thing to help give people more transportation options. And contrary to what some folks might say, really is a big part of helping tackle some of our traffic and congestion issues.
On-street parking rate changes will still need final approval by the Toronto Parking Authority Board. If that happens, the changes could come into effect during the first 3 months of 2025. Tyreek Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
Love it or hate it, daylight saving time ends tomorrow. Many look forward to that extra blissful hour of sleep, while others take a while to adjust. Dr. Tara-Lee Kelford is a registered psychotherapist. She says there are ways to make the fallback more bearable.
Avoid things like technology and shining lights in your face at night. Get up and get some sunlight in the morning if you can, because we also know that we have a system that releases cortisol in the mornings that helps us become alert about 30 minutes after we wake up. And that system is actually improved by daylight. So if you can get outside and get some daylight in the mornings, that also helps us become more alert.
Good tips there. Daylight saving time will end Sunday at 2 a.m. local time. Make sure to adjust your clocks. Sophia joining us now, and I just wanted to share this quick stat from the City of Toronto. They say pedestrian collisions increased by more than 30% in Toronto during the evening commute from November to March, right? It's darker out there, so just a good reminder for everyone to slow down.
And make sure to really have your head on that swivel, right? Whether you're a pedestrian, a cyclist, or a driver, with that extra hour of daylight, wear that reflective clothing, have the blinkers on your bikes, and yes, go out and get some sunshine after that long-awaited last extra hour of sleep. Well, there'll be plenty of sunshine for Sunday, Shannon. It's a really typical fall-like morning with a bright, sunny fall sky, but then watch Sunday afternoon, there is a change afoot. Southerly flow comes in. You're actually above seasonal in southwestern Ontario for Sunday afternoon, and it's a trend that will continue this upcoming work week. We are actually importing a ton of air from the south. It's going to have a lovely warm price tag, but we'll also pay the price when it comes to a wet and windy next few days. Wind gusts could be in excess of 60 kilometers an hour over the next 24, 36, even 72 hours. The next couple days will have this pattern. As this warm front moves in towards the south, you will see incoming days of cloud, even fog into the late evening and early morning, and a constant wet weather stream anywhere around the Nickel Belt between Monday and Wednesday. But towards the south, with this very windy and southerly flow, we will have the long-awaited 20s. Yes, they're back again for the first week of November. Shannon, I'll give you all the details, and Tuesday will really take the cake as far as the heat goes.
Can't wait to hear about it. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
As sources have told CBC News, the federal government will soon unveil details about a high-speed rail line from Toronto to Quebec. But one region in Ontario wants to know when it will be included. As Dale Molnar shows us, a line from Windsor to Toronto has long been promised, and some residents are still holding out hope.
A high-speed rail service from Windsor to Toronto has been promised in the past, most recently by the Kathleen Wynne government, but that died when Doug Ford took office. Now, with sources telling CBC News a new high-speed rail service will be announced shortly for Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec City, local officials are hopeful it won't be long before that is extended down here to Windsor. Tourism Windsor Essex Pelee Island CEO Gordon Orr believes it would increase tourism here.
Because what it would do is we'd be able to get people here quicker, and accessibility to a region is very important, whether it's air, road, or rail. And at this point in time, when you can shorten the distance and the time by at least half to get them here that much quicker, then hopefully the frequency will be more, and of course it'll be faster to get here.
Chris McLeod, the chair of the Downtown Windsor BIA, also believes it would be good for business.
And I think that sometimes people look at Windsor as being too far away, right? We're too far away from the GTA. And so I think anything that makes us more connected to other parts of the province is positive for our area.
Chamber of Commerce President Tony Haddad is optimistic about the news.
The latest discussion around service between Quebec City and Toronto makes sense for a start. Certainly also allows an opportunity in the future for a future phase to extend further westerly to London and to Windsor ultimately, and obviously to then access the U.S. market through Michigan and to Chicago.
Extending a link with Chicago has also been bandied about, and Michigan woman Sue Miller would likely use it to get to Toronto.
It's been a while, but I think if I could get there faster, I would probably go more often.
Urella Andrews from London, England, uses high-speed rail in the UK.
The thing is, in Britain, we're not such a car culture. We rely a lot more on public transport than you guys do here. So do you think, I don't know, I guess high-speed trains would maybe cut down on people driving their cars, perhaps?
Former Transport Minister Omar Al-Gabra said in 2021 that the Toronto to Windsor corridor would be the next step in high-frequency service, meaning more trains traveling the route. So far, a high-speed train is not in the cards for Windsor. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
It is the final weekend of the U.S. presidential campaign. The race to the White House could hardly be tighter, according to the latest polls. As Karen Pauls shows us, the two candidates are zigzagging through swing states in one last push to win over undecided voters.
Thousands of people gathered in Washington's Freedom Square, marching to the White House, part of a nationwide women's event called We Won't Go Back, a reference to the issue of reproductive rights at stake in this election.
No man should ever have the right to tell a woman how to take care of her body.
We're here to just show we are not going back.
It's been a big focus of Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. This week, an ad by a Democratic nonprofit targeting Republican women.
You can vote any way you want. Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey. That ad criticized by former President Donald Trump Saturday on Fox and Friends.
Can you imagine a wife not telling a husband who she's voting for? Do you ever hear anything like that? Even if you have if you had a bad relationship, you're going to tell your husband, it's a ridiculous ad. It's so stupid.
The two candidates are spending the weekend in swing states, trying to woo the small sliver of undecided voters.
Now the fate of our nation is in your hands. We win this state, we're going to win the whole ball game, you know.
We have an opportunity in this election to finally turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump, who spends full time trying to keep us divided and afraid of each other. We're done. We're done with that.
This political scientist says there's a lot at stake.
I see the Republicans and the Democrats as two moving tectonic plates that are getting closer and closer to each other. And the question is, where does all of that energy go? And what impact is that going to have on us and our allies around the globe?
So far, more than 71 million Americans have already cast their ballot, a record number. The election is neck and neck, but partisans are pointing to those early voting numbers as proof their side has an edge. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Washington.
There is a warning tonight for Americans living in Canada. A potential strike by Canada Post could impact their vote. To talk more about that is Jacob Wisoki. He's the Executive Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad Canada. He's joining us from Montreal. Thanks for being here, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So the latest that we've heard from the Canadian Union of Postal Workers is that they remain at the table, but I know your group is being proactive about any potential impact. So what have you been telling your members?
Yeah, so we have been telling our members that even the possibility of a strike could impact your vote. We don't want to take any chances with people's votes. So there are thousands of Americans, over 600,000 Americans living in Canada. So if you sent your vote back by mail already and you're worried it might be impacted by the strike, we are telling all of our members and any American living in Canada to send their vote back through a private courier such as UPS, FedEx, or DHL or anything like that. And if they haven't sent their vote back yet, if they already have sent their vote back yet, then to send a backup ballot through a private courier as well.
It's good that there is that option that you can send a backup ballot. And I know part of the challenge is that every state is different, right? Like some do mail-in, some do even faxes, some do electronic. So it does depend, I guess, where you're from.
Yes, yeah, it does depend on your state. A lot of states do allow fax or electronic return. And if you live in one of the states that does allow electronic or fax return, we encourage everybody to do that or send a backup ballot electronically or by fax.
Right. You and I have been talking, and we know the polls show the race is neck and neck, so every ballot counts. You mentioned you've got thousands of members. Can you talk to us about the potential impact here? How many people we're talking about? How many Americans are living in Canada?
Yeah, so there are over 600,000 eligible U.S. voters living in Canada. That is more eligible U.S. voters than there are eligible voters in Wyoming or in Vermont, DC, North Dakota. So there's an estimated up to 1 million Americans living in Canada, over 600,000 eligible to vote. So that is enough to decide this election. Yeah. Elections are decided by just a few thousand votes. And a lot of these Americans in Canada live in key states like Michigan, like Wisconsin, like Pennsylvania. So these votes really can make the difference and decide this election. So it's really important that every single vote counts.
Right. No, so you totally understand the urgency. Have you been hearing from members this week? Like, what are some of your members saying to you?
I mean, a lot of our members are very concerned about the stakes of this election. Obviously, this election will affect everybody, not just in the U.S., but any American living in Canada will also feel the effects of this election. So people are definitely nervous about how close this race is, which is why we are urging everybody to get their votes in. And we have heard from some members that they've sent their ballot back by Canada Post and are worried that their ballot might be affected by a strike. So we have members sending back backup ballots electronically by fax or by private courier as well.
Well, Jacob, I know it is a very stressful time for you. The countdown is on. You're a busy person, so we thank you for taking the time to speak with us tonight.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
He's with Democrats Abroad Canada, joining us from Montreal. Overseas next, at least 200 people have been killed after flash floods devastated eastern Spain. The region was slammed with a year's worth of rain in just 8 hours. An arts and science center has turned into a volunteer hub for cleanup efforts, with hundreds lining up to help. More than 10,000 emergency personnel are being sent to the area, according to the Prime Minister. Now, he is facing mounting criticism over the government's response to the flooding. Some people have resorted to looting because they have no food or water. We are heading into a quick break. Sophia is back next with your local forecast. Sophia's back now. We're talking about the fall back. Did you and the kids do any prep for bedtime and getting ready?
I am the one that tells everybody to do the prep on the TV, and I did about 0 of it. We're just going to see how it goes tomorrow. We'll see how tired I am on the nighttime news tomorrow.
That's true.
Usually this one is okay. We get that extra hour of sleep. Springing forward is usually a little harder, but now I'm jinxing myself on TV, aren't I?
Good luck.
Yeah, at least we'll have the sunshine tomorrow to carry us through. A pretty typical fall afternoon is shaping up, but an unreal week is ahead. Monday, look at the 20s start to creep in for those of you in parts of southwestern Ontario. Tuesday is the day that takes the cake. As I told you earlier, look at the 20s, folks, even up to Barrie and Ottawa. These are temperatures that are anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees above our seasonal normal, which should be about 8-9 degrees this time of year. We're importing a lot of air from the south that usually comes in pretty fast. Gusts Monday, 30 to 40 kilometers an hour. Tuesday, 50 to 60 kilometers an hour. It continues right into Wednesday. Look at Tuesday overnight, though. These are overnight conditions that are warmer than where our daytime high should normally be. To show you how extreme this temperature anomaly is, if we flip to the other side, we'll be looking at things like minus 15 in Ottawa. We're on the right end of this stick, though. Through Tuesday, you could have quite a bit of rain between actually Monday right to Wednesday in parts of the Nickel Belt and the Georgian shores. As this warm front lifts in, it will be foggy and cloudy in the south and windy. Wet for those of you in the north and the northeast, even into the northwest as well. A couple days in the 20s. And then Wednesday is a day of dropping temperatures. As that front comes through, you'll be single digits by the time Wednesday evening hits. But a few of you will have multiple days in the 20s. For the first week of November, not too bad. Plenty of sunshine at the end of the week as you head back down to seasonal, though, Shannon, so not too shabby.
Yeah, Tuesday, as you say, takes the cake. Thanks, Sophia.
No problem.
That's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. Before we go, we take you to the Royal Agriculture Winter Fair running now through next weekend. We'll see you again tomorrow.